You can start.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Joanne Hanson. I'm the chair of the planning board. And it's my pleasure to welcome two new members of the planning board. Matthew Tenari, who you're not going to see very well because he's on Zoom in Halifax. And Tom Birmingham to my left here. This is Rich Whitty. And the minutes are being taken by, we're a hybrid here and online. The minutes are being taken by Desiree. So when we get to your application, if you could share slowly the names of the various people who are here on behalf of your application, so Desiree can get that down for the minutes. Then we are because we have new members and we have a new application. Well, actually, I want to take a step back and I want to thank the existing members and the new members for their willingness to serve as volunteers, working with our neighbors on behalf of the village. And because we have new members and a new application, we are going to ask the basic question. There's the Pays application and 288 Tuxedo Road. Before we start, if there are any members of the planning board that feel that they need to disclose a conflict of interest or recuse themselves.
Nope.
And that put aside, we will start then with the Pays application, and our attorney Ashley Torrey is online. The other planning board member is Jay Reichgott, who also is involved with the town and will perhaps be joining us a little bit later, but has a conflicting town meeting, unfortunately. So if the folks involved with Pays could come forward. And we are, again, we have some new members. I don't want you to go back through everything, but basically the issue that we're looking at now is relocating a sewer line from where it was initially anticipated to be. I think moving, well, you can explain that, but I think moving into a location between the houses on Continental Road and making various other improvements. So if you could frame that for, just let Desiree know who's here this evening and frame the issue for us.
Sure. I'm James McGuire, the owner of Praxis Management. We're the builders on the project. I've been on the project for about a year. There was a previous builder, so this is my first time before you guys, and I'll try to walk you through how we got to where we're at and what we're proposing.
I appreciate that.
I'm David Getz from Engineering Properties. We've been the site engineer from the beginning of the process. Many meetings on Zoom.
Right.
Went through the approval and the review and all. And so we have some updated plans and details to discuss with you tonight.
And I should, John Ledwith, the key player here in the village that you probably already know, the building inspector. So.
And the homeowner, Wilkie Pays, is here as well.
Good to see you again.
So as I understand it, I mean, we're speaking specifically about the sewer connection. The original approach or hope was to find an existing sewer invert that I think it never materialized for two reasons. I think looking for it in the area behind the proposed home or existing home now, but looking for it in the area behind the home, people felt would create more disturbance. And number two, they felt like even if they found the 100-plus-year-old original sewer connection, that it may not be viable or usable. So the second and a currently approved version was to follow the path of a walkway that the homeowners will use to walk down to Continental Road and then, go for walks or come, down to the clubhouse area or lakeside. that the sewer line would extend from the home and follow that limit of disturbance, and then ultimately connect into a new manhole, proposed manhole on Continental. So this is sort of the approved plan that I came aboard with. I highlighted here the line in green, so you can see the pathway of it. And then I highlighted a few like tricky or problem areas to explain to you guys why we're proposing another option. Number one, the line extended underneath the proposed gunite spa. So if there were ever an issue with the line, we couldn't really undermine and dig under the spa to repair that section. And then number 2 and 3 are two 90-degree turns in the pipe, which we usually try to avoid. They tend to be problematic in places where the sewer line could clog. There are proposed cleanouts there, but again, if we can avoid 90-degree bends, we do that, really at all costs if we can. There also, I should mention that the main line in Continental Road slopes from left to right on this plan. So we're also sort of going against the grain and then bending back into connect at a doghouse manhole location here. That's sort of like counterintuitive because we're pitching this way and then trying to connect into a pipe that's going downhill.
Almost making a U-turn.
Yeah, almost making a U-turn into the main sewer line. Again, we just feel like over time, that could be a problematic connection. So what we're proposing, and the specifics of the engineering and everything, I think David could speak to, but I have highlighted here in green. We're just 45-degree bending around this spa. So if there's ever any issue there, we can get to the line, we can repair it. We have clean out locations before and after. And we've actually provided, we paid for a service to video camera that line and show that it can be cleaned out.
James, maybe you can explain how much of that connection is built up to.
Yeah, right now, the sewer line is built and sticking out underneath the retaining wall here. So that's already in place. What we're proposing is that from that point, we just extend pretty much in a straight manner down the hill and propose a new doghouse manhole access point on the main sewer line. It's a much better connection. We will be probably installing some 22-degree bends and things to avoid existing trees and any rocks or boulders or outcroppings that we come in contact with as we excavate to create this line here. But all in all, this is just a much cleaner, more direct connection for the sewer, and we think over time it'll be less problematic for the homeowners and for the connection on the village line out in the street.
Can you just talk about what the surface area is around the spa and what's involved there?
The surface area, well, right now it's just unexcavated dirt. There is going to be a whole landscape plan here, which was previously presented and approved by Karen, our landscape architect. But basically around the spa is all plantings and vegetation.
And so that hardscape is going to be something that, do you need to get in there and deal with the sewer line, you'll be in a position to do so.
Yeah, the hardscape actually ends at the front edge of the spa.
Okay.
So this is literally all bushes and shrubs. I don't remember specifically which one she specified there, but I know it was on the plan that was previously approved.
And do you have a sense of, when you've laid this out, is it impacting major trees that you're needing to work around in conjunction with the existing approved landscaping plan?
No, I actually, if I can distribute them, if it's helpful, I have some picture packets for everybody here. I know you were at the site today, but.
It's an impressive printer there.
All right, so this is a view actually from the backyard. You see the spa location here. I'm looking on page 1. And I stuck a little white pipe above the wall here. There should be a black marker arrow pointing to it there. So you can see it's sort of a straight shot down the hill in between the trees. And actually in between the homes on the lower side of Continental also.
We also have a Google Earth image of the area, and best as we could with the scales and all, we show that same route to the sewer down to Continental. James and I walked along the road and picked this location for the new manhole, the new connection, based upon existing trees, a boulder that was nearby, and also the fact that this location is between the two homes on the downhill side.
Which we appreciate.
Right. Earlier, our plan, well, we had, like James mentioned, a first plan that connected further uphill on Continental that would have been near the front of this home. And then we had an alternate plan that we were thinking about that would have been close to the front of this home. So the new location straddles those two homes.
Actually, the last page, if it helps, the last page shows the opposite view from Continental looking up at the home. And I have also a black magic marker arrow pointing to that. You can barely see it, but there's that white PVC pipe that I put vertically just to give you as a marker there. So we are gonna be between the trees.
There's some, I guess you'd call it underbrush. There's some shrubs and random small shrubs and trees that have grown up. But we also have a plan provided today by Karen Orange. What would be replanted along the path of this sewer connection.
So we're just looking at visual of and you can see where the line is running. I think you're familiar with it.
Yes.
And so it's heading down in a more direct fashion and avoiding the trees.
Yes.
And this is the other planning board member who is doing double duty for the town and the village.
Yeah, sorry, I was at the town budget hearing meeting, and usually it's a safe bet that you're not going to have a planning board meeting. So,
So John, do you have any questions that you want to pose?
No, I've been advising and working with all of them for the last couple of months. And I think, just to reiterate, the primary reason why it's here is so the planning board can approve and modify the
Right,
disturbance,
right.
which would allow them to put the sewer line in this new location.
Plans we submitted, like John just mentioned, show in a tan or orange line, the approved limit of disturbance and then the new limit of disturbance. The overall disturbance area is very similar. There's not a big difference in total area. And I was starting to say that we have a plan of the proposed sewer connection area where Karen Arndt, the landscape architect, has specified plantings to revegetate that area and stabilize the steep slope. And we can provide those to you also.
And the existing or the proposed walkway path is that's bearing off to the left there is going to stay put.
Yes, that's right. She proposes plantings along there also.
So do any of the other folks in the planning board have any
No
questions?
No.
Um,
I'm good.
Yeah, I was at the site today and I just thought it should have been the first plan of attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it simplifies for the homeowner and improves the functionality, so.
Right.
So that being said, I don't hear any objections, and Ashley has prepared a resolution for us to approve. I think, Ashley, we need to declare that it's a type 1.
Type 2 under seeker. That would be the first motion.
The type 2. And so may I have a motion that this is a type 2 consideration? All in favor?
Aye.
And then have folks had a chance to look at the resolution? I know it kind of was coming from the lawyers. I sent it out rather later today, but there were draft versions.
It's not on my phone.
Does anybody need to take a look at it?
As long as what's in front of us is what was sent out, then I'm good.
Joanne, I just had one nitpick. I think the actual new proposed location is downhill versus uphill. I think the resolution said in the procedural history.
What line is that, Matthew? Do you recall, or can you give us some?
So I think he's referring to on page 2 of the resolution, I had said that the new location's approximately 30 feet uphill of the previously approved location. So should that be 30 feet downhill?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
Thank you for, well, that's good eyes.
So we can make that change.
Yeah, because Continental does slope down there. And I was thinking left, like uphill, but anyway. And with that, may I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Oh, there may be people online that
Okay,
they want to be
whoops.
heard. I'm sorry.
All right. Yeah, I apologize. Are there any questions in either the audience or online of folks who have questions about this?
Sherry, I think you're muted.
Is,
Hi. Mark, do you want to go first?
And Mark, you're muted too.
Hi, my name is Mark Rothberg, and I live at 202 Continental Road, right below the proposed new sewer line. And I just had two questions. The first is, how would the new sewer manhole affect the runoff onto Continental Road? Because as you mentioned, the home is downhill, and during rainstorms, at least 3 this summer, there's a huge amount of rain that comes down on the road, and that actually goes downhill directly into my driveway, ends up in my basement. So I was just wondering how, if you're relocating the line to, for the runoff to go down hill towards Continental, where is this manhole? In other words, how is it going to affect the runoff onto the road, which is very substantial as it is right now?
Shouldn't have any detrimental effect at all. There'll be a pipe from the home down to Continental underground that'll carry the wastewater from the home. And no changes are proposed to the asphalt elevations in Continental Road. We need to locate that manhole where the sewer line is. No one's quite sure where it is and how deep it is, so the contractor will be determining that before he installs it. But this.
do you want to pick that up so
Sure.
the folks online can, did you all get a chance? I apologize, I didn't see when you all came into the meeting. Did you get a chance to, I think the other one may show it a little clearer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the new connection is proposed along this route here.
Actually, if I can, the camera is there
Oops.
in the back of the room, so I don't know to what extent they'll see it.
John, do you want, I could share my screen with the plans if it's what we have.
Sure. And the plans were available online, but if you can share your screen, that might help.
So can you all,
I mean,
can you see the meeting? I mean, it's the bright green line. And if I could just say, one of the thoughts behind where it's now being located is that it is between the two houses versus the prior location. Okay.
Right. And that would bring me to the second question. You said it's going to be connected to the existing between two houses. Do you know which houses on Continental Road? Do you have the numbers that it's going to be connected in between? Which houses?
Well, I think one of them is the Bishko house, right?
I think it's between, what's the house downhill of Bishko? I'm sorry, I don't.
I believe
It's
if it
bet-
helps
it-
at all, I think that.
Hi, this is Jerry Bishko. It's between my house, 222 Continental, and the O'Neill's house,
Yeah, okay.
right between the two of them.
If I may, all of these piping changes have to do with sanitary sewer. And there are no changes proposed to the profile of the road or anything else. So there should be no effect on stormwater runoff.
That was my question. And as far as it being clogged, that's still not going to affect any drains, that's happening by runoff on the road.
Yeah,
that's not
some of the current storm drains there do clog, and I actually go out and clean them myself with a rake because leaves and things can stop them up. I prefer not to add to that task, and if I don't get out there, something have additional water coming down our lawns into our basement. We've had, for the first time in 7 years, water in the basement this fall.
And to that end, I just want to piggyback on that. You know, you're saying it's going to be it's a sewer line, but you have to dig that, right? Presumably you're going to be excavating that green line. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how deep will you excavate?
Typically about 4 feet forward, perhaps in the street, we expect maybe 5 to 6 feet deep, but
Okay, so that's a big, long line, right? That you're going to lay the pipe. So, you know, during the time that you're excavating, you know, we have seen excessive runoff since the project started. And again, you know, Mark has always had this problem, I think, Mark, but we are now seeing some water in our basement where we've never seen it before. So what about the time that you are excavating?
we have erosion control measures already proposed on the plan. And as part of our submission tonight, we have a landscaping plan for the area of the proposed sewer connection that serves several purposes, including quick stabilization of the affected area, of the disturbed area, because it's a pervious area now. It'll again be pervious. We're not proposing any impervious area along that connection, but there is the risk of erosion as the soils are disturbed if there's a storm event. So part of Karen Arndt's plan is to hydroseed the area to establish a quick stabilization of the area, and then also plantings of ferns and shrubs and even some small trees. And she's insisting that that planting be done not just along the strip, but the plants she's introducing or using will be spread across the slope somewhat also, so it won't look like a scar in the landscape. The new plantings will be integrated across the area.
And assuming an approval this evening, what is your timing on the execution?
James?
I want to do it really within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'd be giving a few days notice because the end section of this project would mean that we would have to go across Continental Road to the existing sewer main. So I'll work with Mr. Ledwith to notify everybody as to when we're doing it, so everybody understands any change to the traffic or anything for the day that, as we're working. And I should mention also, of course, we're going to put erosion control measures in place during the project, but also that there are erosion control measures in place existing during the entire project. So we shouldn't be causing any additional runoff or anything down to Continental now.
And the planting can then, because we're getting late in the season, the planting can then subsequently.
Going to be up for 100-foot trench.
I wasn't sure who was that.
Right. I mean, I'm sorry, the plantings aren't going to take effect till spring, we would assume. So we're going to have a whole winter with a gash in the landscape,
Yeah, you're
if
gonna
you
have-
will.
It's got to be at least 100-foot long trench that's 4 feet deep. That is a huge gash.
That's
I
gonna-
can't imagine putting some ferns in. It's a thoughtful measure in a way, but there's no way that can prevent serious erosion
The
control.
trench is gonna be refilled. I mean,
Immediately.
immediately, it's
Immediate.
Right, but it's going to be dirt till spring, presumably. I mean, what kind of plants are going to grow now? We're going into the cold season.
yes.
So,
You-
so
Let's
James,
go one at a
James,
time.
I have a question. it seems to me like, and I don't have the context here, but it seems to me like there is a previously approved sewer line plan that looks meaningfully longer than what's proposed. So is it true to say that this will actually be a much less and shorter line and disturbance than you already have approved?
Significantly, yes.
Yes. And in addition, until the plants actually do root and do their job, so to speak, there's, artificial things that we put in place such as silt fencing, hay bales. There are all sorts of other things that we'll put in place as erosion control measures while the plants, are growing. So, that's another thing to consider. It's not going to be an open, barren gash, so to speak, in the hillside until things grow in. There are other things that we put in place.
And how long would you anticipate the actual excavation taking?
The actual work to put everything in place is probably a week of work, maybe a 5-day work week. The last day or maybe 2 days will be in the street. That's the hardest part to do, to erect that doghouse that we have to, and the new manhole. Right. That would be the part that would take the longest. We have to let some concrete set before we do the.
Continental Road will be closed, the one-way section of Continental will be closed.
I think we'd have to speak to Mr. Ledwith and see.
Well, I think it'll be closed, and I think we'll make Continental 2 ways temporarily. So the people at the bottom of the hill can come in from the lower part, and a few people above this construction would still come in at the upper. It just wouldn't be, contiguous.
We could put an off work hours, we could put a road plate there too.
Well, if you put a road plate there, then, that would help. But we've done this before on this road and others where we would make it 2 ways for, those days that they're working. So you'd still have access to your home.
I'm sorry, could you comment just for a minute or two on what a doghouse manhole is, and is it viewable from the street? Is that to be covered, or does that sit
It's
below ground level?
It's a concrete structure. Oh, actually, you should speak to that.
We submitted a detail. I don't know if that's available on the screen, but I can pass these out to the board members. It's a sanitary sewer manhole, a concrete manhole, and it's called a doghouse because you're going to actually cut a semicircle and a slot in the bottom of it, sort of like the entrance to a doghouse, to fit over the existing sewer line. The contractor will excavate the sewer line, determine its location, depth, and then tailor this manhole to fit appropriately over the existing pipe. Once the manhole's in place, they actually cut the pipe and make the new connection and all. But because of the shape of the opening, it's called a doghouse manhole. Once it's installed, it's entirely backfilled, paved over. The only visible change would be a manhole cover in the street at the location.
Thank you.
Are there other questions that people would like to pose?
I just want one more comment just to address the distinction between the existing original plan. While it may be longer, there's a difference that it was uphill versus downhill as far as the runoff is concerned. It may be, I think someone mentioned 100 feet, the original plan, but that was uphill, which wouldn't have any impact of any sloping or drainage issues. I'm just pointing that out. It may be longer, but based on the fact that it's uphill, it wouldn't have any significant risk to Continental Road and the houses below because of the runoff. So while downslope may be a shorter distance, you do have the risk of additional runoff onto the homes that are on Continental. I just wanted to point that out.
Connection was still sloping downhill. It was dropping more than 10 feet from this location down to the road.
I was going to say, it's just it would be hitting the road in a different
Less
spot.
slope, but still sloping downhill. So, and as has been mentioned, it would have required a much longer excavated area. So in my mind, although it's steeper, this new location will provide less disturbance.
And this is kind of the old location.
Chris, do you all have any other questions? No? Everybody done with their questions?
I have one question. Clearly you're going to go through and do this. We've had some significant rain events and it's been kind of unprecedented. Our concern is if you're doing this excavation, even if it's only going to take a week and we have one of these large rainstorms and we start seeing effects, are people on site to mitigate the effects? I mean, our house, come on, our houses are right below this giant excavation. It's a little unnerving. In particular, I mean, now it's between Michael and I think for Michael's house, certainly, it's kind of like it's right in the shot of that digging of the pipe that's going to go way down in the ground. We just like some guarantees that if something occurs while you're digging and there's a giant rainstorm, that we're protected in some way.
Well, look at the weather forecast.
Yeah,
too.
we have people on site every day, number one. Number two,
Yeah, the camera is,
Oh,
sorry, we're looking at you on the screen and not where the camera is, but.
We have people on site every day and, we obsess about the weather, so we always look about, what's coming up and what days are gonna rain and how much rain we're getting. So, to answer your question, I feel like we go out of our way also to make sure that nobody's adversely affected below us. And I know these developments, I know you've been looking at a wooded lot for many years maybe, but, part of the design of these projects is that we put in place a lot of drainage. So by the time this project's complete, the drainage, the retention of the water and all of that will actually be far better than what it was naturally before.
Yeah, I know that we've all, I think everyone, thank God we're not West Point, but everyone has experienced extreme rains. And so whatever, just the intensity of what nature is delivering is creating certainly, we've added a second sump pump situations, which is not to minimize or step sideways on your concerns. And so I think obviously this has to be managed while it's being installed. And as you know, in the original approval process, there was a great deal of discussion, and the applicant has maintained that buffer, which they're intending to reestablish once this is back in place. And I think from our point of view, well, from a planning perspective, putting the manhole between the two houses and the run between the two houses rather than at a house was an improvement. I don't know, Jay is our engineer. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No.
We certainly hear your concerns about runoff during the construction period and until the establishment of the ground cover, which is part of the approved design. But I think with it's the consideration of the planning board that this is overall an improvement on what was previously proposed. Or a good approach to connecting to the sewer. So with that, and I apologize that I did not see that you all came in after we started the meeting. I did not mean to cut off your opportunity to comment on the project. But with that, I would like to propose the resolution that Ashley has prepared for us with the one correction by Matthew. May I have a motion?
So moved.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you.
The timing is not Christmas week, is it? I don't care.
Sorry.
I've been muted.
You're not muted, sir. Maybe we can ask the gentleman, can we avoid the holiday week? I don't know. James? Or,
Yeah.
I assume if you're gonna do it in the next 2 weeks, maybe after Thanksgiving and not during Thanksgiving
Or
week.
ground freezes is what I'm shooting for.
Well, listen.
You don't want to pay golden time to do it over Christmas break?
Okay, thank you, everybody.
So the next application, and I don't know whether you want it referred to as 288 Tuxedo or the Ramen property. What's your preference? Okay. And it's a pleasure to meet you all. If you could just, I guess I keep getting, we're still adjusting to the camera. Desiree is just recording who's here on behalf of the applicant. So if you could just let her know that and let us know that.
Okay, I am Jeff DeGraw with Ron Architect, and I have with me Tyler Polino. May we sit here?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, not my meeting.
If you don't mind, I'll give you a little. I've been approached 2 times by the architect for the project to do some cleaning up of some of the dead trees, fallen trees, etc. And I thought before they started any activity, let's just get a draft site plan before the boards. Let's figure out, where we're going and what we're doing. We're not against you cleaning up the property, but let's get a draft plan going. I also thought I didn't want them to mark anything just yet until we had a collective meeting as far as marking trees over a certain size and marking maybe the corners of the house and the line of the driveway. So what's been submitted is just a draft plan so everybody can get an idea what's going on, so the neighbors have been notified. And that's kind of where we stand. There's not a lot on this site plan, but at least it's starting point. And I do have some things to say about the water and sewer connections.
And should we, is there, let's see, in terms of this set, I think it would be helpful just to start with the, yeah, if we could start with the site plan itself, probably the back page here. And if you could just walk
This
us.
is, okay, this is the same as we got electronically?
Yes.
Okay.
That's not a bad page. The site plan table.
Right.
Tell me what page it is.
Which is the,
John, I have a quick question before we get started. And I'd love to walk the site when I get back to Tuxedo, but does this require a new driveway cut or is there already a driveway? There is one already?
there's a double set of stone pillars. There's one to Cindy's house. And then there's a second set of stone pillars that is already marked on here at the beginning of that driveway.
Okay.
So I think really, if I could, this is, I think, just a great opportunity to just kind of introduce the project as a whole and
Right.
For us to understand what kind of processes you want to go through and make sure we meet all that and get to a finish line. So there's really not much detail right now, so it's really big picture about just showing, the overall house. It's 288, it's right up behind the boathouse. And, we've got some kind of developed plans here, some exteriors to look at. And, I think everything fits within the setback lines. Probably one of the things that I know John wants to talk about, and the challenge is that we have that water main. There's an existing water main that runs right through the property. So, part of it, this proposal is to relocate the water main and dodge the house. So that's kind of where we're at.
And the property, it kind of comes up hits a plateau and then rises up
Mhm.
in a second plateau. And the water main is kind of the edge of one of the plateaus. And looking at these contour lines, it's kind of hard to read that. What's your thinking kind of about how you want to position the house on those two different planes?
There is, I can't remember the number, but there's roughly 30 foot of grade change from one corner of this house to the other. So the house is right now pretty cleverly designed to fit into that whole thing. Maybe some of the exterior elevations sort of show
So
that.
it's stepping up into the.
It steps up, and actually the back of the property is actually set into it. So it's really a retaining wall. At the whole back part of it, there's really no windows here. Everything is sort of set into it.
Mhm.
So that helps to, manage the whole grade change on it. So it'll work pretty nicely. I think that water main, it almost feels like there was an old, maybe a path or road that
I
goes
think
through
there
there.
is-
No.
This this is one of the neighbors.
Hi, I'm your next door neighbor.
Well, I'm just drawing. But yeah, so here, this is.
Okay, sorry.
the peak.
Yeah.
And you're right here, right? Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's the other
suspect that there used to be perhaps a carriageway through there. I don't know.
There was.
Yeah, that came through your house.
So it's sort of tricky. That water main is like right through the property. Yeah.
Right, so you are anticipating relocating that.
Mhm.
And so, and it's going to essentially do a dog leg around the house.
We will have to have the engineers get involved with this thing. This is just our idea of where, it could go. But I think also the discussion is, how do we handle that engineering process? And this is another question.
Well, I think there's a few people have to get involved at once. I mean, the planning board has to be comfortable with putting the house generally where this is. The board of trustees have to be, I guess, notified and request permission to relocate a village line. And we obviously need an engineering plan on how that's going to be done. And I believe it might involve health department approval since it's relocating a water main.
I would guess that Orange County Health is gonna be
At least be notified.
notified, and if they have issues, they're gonna be. I don't know how, we got mains around here. I don't know
Well,
how
This
big
main,
this one is.
did they mention the size? Was it's just a four? I think it's only a 4-inch main. And it only services, Cindy's house and the house above her. Not that it makes a difference, but there's only, I believe, 2 other connections above,
That's
Where they
Glenn
would-
Young's house.
yeah, Glenn Young, Cindy Booth, and then it's on this property. Not that it makes a difference, but,
Well, I mean, it's, it makes a difference, not to you, obviously, but it makes a difference because it's a spur line instead of, it's not a trunk line serving half the village. There
oh,
are,
no.
there are significant, the size matters in some things.
Well, like I
This is
said,
one of them.
this is no more than 6-inch, and I think they said it's a 4-inch line.
But I
so,
agree with you. It's gonna
yeah.
take Board of Health, it's gonna take DPW, it's gonna take trustees, it's gonna be a whole.
Well,
But
well,
see
but
it-
I think a lot of that starts here, that if nobody's comfortable with the location of the house, then, maybe the line doesn't have to be moved, but that's why we're here,
Understood.
to start with
Understood.
citing.
I mean, I think you've drawn for us the setbacks, and while this is a substantial lot, it's not within the context of the setbacks. You can kind of shift a few feet one way or the other, but there's not a great deal of flexibility. One question that a neighbor asked is why you chose to swing the driveway to the left versus the existing one that kind of comes around to the right. And is that basically just a function of, you've got the courtyard design that you've created and that's how that's.
So the reason, there's a couple of reasons on that one. There's also the property abuts, I'm not sure what the name of that road is up on the top right here.
Continental.
Continental.
The one
So-
we were just talking
Okay,
about.
that's the one, famous Continental. So what they'd like to do is get access to that also. So you can see that we have the driveway sort of connecting right here. So it made sense to put the garage on this side. And the other reason too is the views of the lake are primarily this way.
Mhm.
So we didn't really want to bring the road up and have the garage on that side of the property. We wanted to keep it over on the other side. So for those reasons, primarily, that's how this plan developed in this direction.
Okay, so I hadn't really perceived, so you're talking about connecting onto Continental as
Mhm.
well. And I think it's marked, the driveway grade is going to be right at, it looks like, the legal limit.
We're gonna have to have the engineers get in and actually get this plan developed. So that's, we know that's the next part of this process.
Be here.
Yeah.
Yep.
There.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, so this is, where's the
Road's here. Lake's
The lake's
here.
here, Tuxedo Road, so the lake is over here.
Continental's going this way?
It goes like, right like this. I put you on the same orientation as that. My lake is down here.
Where's Tower Hill Loop?
It's up a fair bit. This is really only touching into Continental. Because you're,
Yeah, Cindy owns the property between this property and Tower Hill Loop. It's quite a distance up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
Sure, where
the
this
very southern part of Cindy's property goes up to Tower Hill Loop. Is this close to where we were just talking about?
I'm not
It's
sure.
on the same street.
Oh, no, I know that,
but
where on the? Continental sort of dead.
It's at the
dead
very,
ends.
it'd be at the very top.
Oh,
Um,
okay, okay, that's, so it goes up the hill then.
Yeah, it's at the very top.
Right behind you going all the way up.
I see. Okay,
I'm not reading this thing correctly.
No, I wasn't either.
Where is the driveway talking about going from?
Here,
Right here.
this is the top of
Okay.
Continental.
All right. That isn't making sense to me.
I know.
Or it might be that road, I think on Google Maps called Terrace Road, not Continental.
I think it is Terrace Road.
Yeah, you're not that close to the one way of Continental. You're close to Terrace Road.
Okay,
But that's significantly to the north of you, which I think is where you were generally pointing before, next to the
okay,
Sauls property.
Continental is,
Well, one of the comments that I had when looking at this plan set, because that I sent, not to you guys, internal. We got sent this thing and said, here's the plan that we want the planning board to look at, which is great. And I said, wait a minute, first of all, there are a bunch of pages missing. And second of all, there isn't a good site plan that really locates, right? There's no vicinity map. There's nothing that really locates this relative to streets and all the rest of it. Now that I understand that this is very preliminary, I understand why,
Yep.
but that, to answer these kind of questions, that's gonna be very, very important to have, to be able to get a better understanding of what your intentions are.
yeah, and the contour line so that we can read that 30% grade change.
Contours.
Now, what Joanne said, you don't have a lot of room to move the site.
You have room, I mean, you can see with the setback lines, you do have some room to move it around a little bit. The problem with kind of trying to avoid the water main is that we start pushing it down and getting it closer and closer to the road, which I think makes an impact most people probably wouldn't really want. So I think the idea is to try and keep it further up the hill a little bit.
Right,
So, I think that's really the intention. The views are better, So I think it would probably put it kind of in line with your house there as far as the height, distance back from the road. And I think, to your point, having a context plan that shows adjoining properties and where that house is too, to get the context makes a lot of sense. So I think follow up, we'll get all that on it. Yep.
and so we've talked about the water main. John, where are the other,
There is a sewer connection somewhere between this property and the Sauls property, which is just to the north of this lot. We did not look for it when we were up there, asked DPW to locate it. That would be the closest connection, and it is somewhere on the north property line, not too far from the line of this property. The other interesting point is, I was told by the water department that while you can connect to the line that you're relocating, they would prefer that you connect to the line that's actually in Tuxedo Road because you'll get better pressure and just more reliable water. Once again, the line that you're relocating is a relatively small diameter. It works well for the few homes that are on it. But as far as pressure and quality, they would suggest that you connect to the line that's in Tuxedo Road, which is in the roadway.
So that potentially that line could come up and service Cindy's house and this house potentially?
Well, we're not asking you to connect Cindy's house. We're just
But-
worried about where you're connecting.
But I think, I'm wondering if Cindy's comes from that,
Cindy comes from the line that you're relocating.
okay, it does, that's what I
Yes.
figured.
Yeah, I'm looking at the map, so
Yeah.
I know where every. Yeah. We can't stop you if you want to connect to the line that Cindy's on, but the water department's recommending that you connect to the line in Tuxedo Road.
But what I'm just wondering though is if the option is to come here, go around here to get back to Cindy's house, does it make more sense to come up here and go, sort of left and right to get better pressure for everybody? Just wondering.
Here's the issue, which we have a lot of experience with. You're gonna have more pressure from the line on Tuxedo Road. But the line that goes across this lot to Cindy's and beyond, they're concerned by increasing the pressure dramatically, you're gonna increase the amount of sediment that's in the old pipe. And that's why the water department doesn't want any major changes to that line, other than relocating it, which would be a new line, which might help the sediment to some degree. They really didn't want your house to do something like that and create more issues with the two homes that are down the street.
I think you're not talking about the same thing. If I understand correctly, you are offering to connect Cindy's house to the new branch that you're
See, this, potentially,
postulating.
potentially.
Sorry, I'm not.
Okay, so you don't come from here, you come up here.
Yes,
And.
And you're still-
And then the two houses beyond, you connect to the existing, well.
well,
that-
but
you come in-
you'd also be connecting, by connecting in that manner, you'd also be connecting to the house above Cindy, whose name I keep forgetting.
Just for the record, we're saying relocate the water line. What we're really saying is we want to figure a way to get the house in this spot. And of course, we'll work whichever makes sense in the water main, so.
Well, I just think it's important because
Yeah.
we want, we'd like to have obviously our system updated, and you relocating the line with a new line is good. But I was also advised by the water department that it would be better if you connected to the main on Tuxedo Road.
We're totally open to whatever makes sense.
In case, yeah, you'll talk to but be aware, all of the pipes in the ground are original. So that's 18.
80.
Old. So,
Understood.
very tuberculated cast iron
Yeah. understood.
water lines and lots of 4-foot pieces of clay drained top.
Hence the reason if we change the pressure dramatically,
Ah,
you're
I get it.
riling up of the sediment in the line.
I would prefer,
That's all.
sorry,
Go ahead.
I would just say, I would prefer, once we have the engineers on board,
Mhm.
to let them
Absolutely.
sort that all out.
Sure.
So we'll stick to the house.
As you just heard, drainage is an issue. And so there is kind of a little, it's not exactly a streamlet, but it's certainly a drainage channel that's running down the property at this point. So that is something that, in terms of the landscaping and design with the engineers, in conjunction with the landscaping, just thinking about how to handle the drainage that will need to be done, particularly when you're covering a significant portion of the property.
Mhm.
So there's kind of a funky little pipe that's sticking out in the middle, and I'm not quite sure what that pipe is for or doing. It's kind of hanging around right in here in a drainage channel.
Having worked on some other things in the park, we desperately want this to go really smoothly and easily for everybody and make it a happy project.
Yeah.
So we're all into doing what we have to do here, so.
And I asked John if he knew what it is, so I apologize if I'm not getting my directions correct. But there's sort of a metal thing that's right up at the top of the property, a metal plate on the road, and I didn't kind of know what that is.
Are you talking about on the road or?
It's like right off the road, if you're coming along Continental.
Oh, on Continental.
It's like a metal plate, and a good sized plate that's up there.
They're large round plate, so
Large
six,
round.
six or so feet in diameter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on Mr. Saul's property, and apparently that was an old cistern,
Okay,
which has been.
so
covered.
it's not yours. I mean, it wasn't
Th-
quite
This,
clear
this,
where.
this property doesn't go all the way up to Continental.
Oh, okay, all right,
No, the Saul's property and Cindy's property creates that buffer.
okay.
So, but that is on the Saul's property. Apparently it's an old cistern, which has been covered for a
Okay.
long time.
So one of the things that both we and the bar will be looking for is, as you develop the plan further, to be staking out where the driveway is, where the house is, you know, where you want to be locating things.
No, I think at a minimum, we do the center line of the proposed driveway and corners of the house in different colors, so we coordinate things. And then I guess, the approximate location of the, well, I guess the approximate location of the existing water main where it goes through the house, just for perspective. We did discuss trees. I don't know, if you want to stick to the village code and, the board and the village has jurisdiction over, anything 5 inches or larger. So if you want to mark, trees 5 inches or larger, in diameter measured 48 inches above the ground, that the board and I do have jurisdiction over, so we could start with that. And that would at least create the framework for, you know, how much disturbance is possibly required.
And Cindy, you may know this better than any of us. Do you have any questions you want to ask, or?
A few, yeah. I mean, I just looked and I understand that they're just preliminary drawings. I have several concerns. One, because I'll be looking directly out at a large swimming pool, several outdoor dining areas, terraces, and so on and so forth. And it wasn't clear to me, the preliminary drawings that I looked at referred to a number of trees being taken down, but it really didn't specify which ones, and some of those are old growth trees. And you do have, I will warn you, you do have a drainage problem coming down that hill when there's heavy rain. And I, at one point, going back to the late 80s, had to put in a new driveway, and it turned into a huge issue. We ended up buying an easement from the original subdivider, Ken Torso, for $150,000 to put in our new driveway. And we had a lot of objections from the planning board at the time about the curves and the runoff. Just heads up to help you not be adversarial. But you do have that issue, and my concern is both aesthetically taking out some of those big old 100-year-old trees, but also looking at the plans, and I understand it's preliminary, it looked to me like the plantings that you were doing around the terrace area and the pool, they almost look like several big bushes. And I'm going to be looking right at this, and from a noise perspective, and also the fact that you do have an extensive outdoor entertainment area here, I would really like to see a much more detailed landscaping plan that would create a significant buffer zone. And that's going to be a major concern of mine, because a few bushes and ground plantings aren't going to do it. And, you know, John explained to me today that you would be marking any old growth trees that you want to take out, but I think you need to be very careful about that, because the runoff, which comes down from Continental Road, and it does, those trees also kind of help with the runoff. And if you remove all those and you don't put substantial, and I'm not talking about bushes, but major trees there, you're going to have a serious problem, which in turn is really going to affect, you know, my driveway, but more significantly too, your property. The other thing that I went through, I'm sure everybody remembers, for 3 years was a problem with the stone retaining wall, which you do have runoff, and it ended up being a many hundreds of thousands of dollars project for me to have to rebuild the wall and excavate and do all sorts of things. So you do have that retaining wall down there. And, you know, I'm sure everybody will be diligent about that, but it is a concern that you have to watch out for. My whole section going over 60 feet has been completely rebuilt, but yours hasn't, and it's over 100 years old. So when you do your curved driveway and considering the slope that you have, I would just whisper in your ear about that, and also suggest that you really do some substantial plantings, excuse me, that will help with that runoff. It's going to be a big deal.
So,
And, you know, rain gardens, and I'm having a planning board mental pause here. What are the underground cisterns for?
Infiltration, yeah.
Yeah.
it's kind of,
Yeah, I mean, what do you want to, French drains, you know, with infiltration basins, whatever.
The
Those orange
infiltration
plastic
basins is
things,
what
whatever, you
I'm
know.
looking for, because you do have, I mean, I can tell you there's already a significant drainage channel that's just obvious right there.
Well, and coming down the new driveway, which took us, I mean, we had to walk up from the boathouse for 1.5 years because the planning board, it took them that long to, this is going back to the 80s, to approve a new driveway. And they looked at coming down from Continental Road, which was rejected because of the steepness of the slope. We did, you can't imagine what we went through to construct our new driveway, but I will tell you that even now, and particularly when it gets icy and snowy, and I worry, I don't object to it, but heads up to you when you have a S-curve like that on a icy, snowy day.
You end up over here.
Yeah. I can
Yeah.
tell you firsthand. So, you know, just a few of those things, but you know, aesthetically, my big concern is that you create a buffer zone. I mean, personally, I'd love to see the whole thing move this way, but I understand what you're trying to do and maximize your view. I get that. But you know, it's just very close, and the home that's being proposed is more than 2.5 times the size of mine on a lot that's a third the size. So it's a big house on it's not that, you know, it's a tiny lot, but relatively speaking, you've got a
There's
lot
probably
going on
room
there.
to slide, you know, so I
Yeah.
think, you know, with the, I think you're giving us too much credit for thinking all the planting through at this point.
I know, I don't mean to be
No,
difficult, but.
no, but really what just happened, we just did graphically, you know,
Uh-huh.
it was really just get something in here to start to show you the
Right,
picture. So
right.
we're not proposing
I
taking
understand
anything
that.
down yet.
Yeah.
And I think that they'll want a buffer too, you know, so I
Mhm.
think it's the same thing. So totally get that and would
Okay.
love to work with you on that as it
Yeah,
progresses.
though that just
Yep.
those few comments, but I would be careful. I mean, just because we went through, you can't imagine what, in terms of the grade and the runoff with the driveway and the S curve, and you know,
And you know,
they've done that.
Yeah,
The
you
S-
don't want to be coming down that driveway, across the road.
Into the
down-
boathouse.
Down
Into my front
boathouse.
yard, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
No.
and I think what's really gonna happen too is like, this is architects just taking a quick stab at something. Again, probably giving too much credit for what's on here really right now. So I think, you know, if you guys, it's really what I want to do here is like any major flaws or you see something. So I'm really hearing drainage buffer. We got to deal with the water main. But I think, you know, the next step is we haven't hired an engineer yet. You know,
Right.
so we need the engineer on board to start making this real. you know, and all this stuff, so.
Well, you can save yourself a lot of time
Yeah.
by, trust me.
I believe it. I got it.
Yeah.
Well, they're building on the side of a hill, you know,
Yeah,
so they're
no,
gonna
yeah,
have the runoff
it's
for
tricky.
sure.
Yeah,
You know,
and you should go on the property someday when it's raining hard
Mhm.
and just check it out.
yeah, I'm
See
sure
what
it's a,
doing.
I'm, yeah.
Um,
Obviously, you've got two issues. You've got the existing, drainage that's happening naturally, and then everything you're gonna have to do to meet the requirements to not increase
that.
runoff from the property because of impervious area and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So Matthew, we have not forgotten you there. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? This is
No,
our
I don't
site
have
plan.
questions at this point. I would like to go walk around and try to orient myself with the plan.
The other thing, and again, just trying to be helpful, not critical, but in terms of snow plowing in the winter, when you have the S curve, and again, I really truly know what I'm speaking about. But you might want to consider, if you can, or to discuss with your engineer, straightening that out, just because that's a difficult.
In a perfect world,
Uh-huh.
we would do this.
Yep.
And the only and this is just gonna come down to the engineering, once it hits there, it's just this grade.
Right.
You know, so that, I think this was just I think Sierra did this, just a quick stab to
Okay.
kind of get this in. All on her.
Wow, you got bus tires right
Oh,
across
no,
your
she
back
did-
about
no, she
now.
did a great job. Hey, actually, we're gonna pull out the other drawings so we can show you kind of.
Yeah.
Where are some of those? Yeah, so. Yes,
Actually,
I think.
So,
that would-
sorry, I do have one question for John. John, on that connection to Terrace Road, is that a public road? The one on the side?
That's a defunct old, former road, and it goes up behind my property and traverses on top of yours, but that's no longer an active road.
Got it. I'm just gonna show you this one with all the
Okay,
trees.
okay. Oh, now we're talking.
Now we're talking trees. Now we're talking trees. You know, so that's, and this just to give you kind of the look of the house
Right.
too.
No, I think the house is very pretty. Good job. I don't have any problem with that. It's the.
Can we flip back to that and flip this way? So we can see more hands?
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yep. You know, you're catching us very much still in the kitchen on this one.
Sure.
so,
Right.
You know, we are totally, yeah,
You gotta put something on paper so we can.
yeah.
Right here.
That's
Yeah.
exactly.
I
You
have
know
But
what?
I think the snow plowing is a is a real issue.
Yeah.
Right up. This
I have a
is-
long steep driveway, so.
Extra lot you have.
Well, originally, mine was 3 lots. It was 2 acre zone, and then I designed 3 at the request of the bank. But it's actually 6.25 acres. And it goes from the very-
It's so true.
They started with burning question.
Is that your tea house? Whose tea house?
That's mine, yeah.
I rode past it on with my
Yeah.
skull and I'm like, whose is it? Where do you get to it?
There is a path from the Tower Hill Loop all the way down to the lake, and it passes your tea house. Who owns that?
Well, that's all on my property. John is
Yeah, I know.
familiar with the little property. Alan Young thinks it's his, but no, it's my property goes all the way up to Continental Road and right up to the border, literally right up to the support wall of Glenn Young's house. And then past that, up to, if you go down Tuxedo Road, there's a old wrought iron gate with an H on it, which stands for Halsey. So my property goes to that and then juts out, goes almost over to the old Curry property. I'm not sure who bought the Curry house, but
And then, it goes to the left. If we're looking up, it's to the left of Glenn Young's house.
it's right below Glenn Young's. It goes, if you're standing on Continental Road, it literally goes up to Continental Road. To, if you're standing on the road facing the lake, it would be to the right of Glenn Young's house. If you're looking up the mountain and seeing it from the bottom, it would be to the left, all along Continental Road. And down to-
It goes up right directly across from the entrance to Alex Psalm's house.
Yeah.
Where Alex Psalm's house, Alex Psalm's house, his main road, his
Yes,
property ends right opposite that.
really.
Who owns the house that the Palms used to own? now? Because that's sitting in the midst of all this
Yeah,
too.
that is, always a heart surgeon, not Harnett, but, oh, I'll think in a
Well,
minute, but yeah.
there's a low, uh, ranch that's
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
a chunk out of over
And
here,
he's way up
right
on
here.
Continental,
Property
and
abuts
then
this.
all of those old stone ruins and stuff
Yes.
are on my property.
Oh.
So all the stone ruins and the old formal gardens and all of that
So the,
are on my property.
I don't know whether
See,
it's
my
doggy or
confusion-
person memorial? Is
I'm
that your
sorry?
doggy or personal memorial? Whose is that? The bench and the,
Mine.
okay.
See, my confusion is the fact that I thought that all those columns that used to be a beautiful garden and that
Right.
I thought that was the property we're talking
No,
about.
that's all my property.
Yeah, that's
And
way
it
to the
goes-
right of this. It's
Yeah.
way to the right, I think.
If
it's
you
on
go
the-
up behind my house, if you walk, there's that, and there's an old brick grape arbor, and then there's a huge, what used to be formal gardens that the
Yes.
Halsey built with
Yes.
steps coming down and
No, that's beautiful.
that's all my property, yeah. And then I go all the way up the side of the mountain to Glenn Young's retaining wall, and then past that, and the tea house that you're talking about is actually past Glenn Young's house overlooking the lake,
When you say his retaining wall, where he parks his cars.
yeah.
Part of it, yes.
Yeah.
And then, then further to
Welcome
the
to
east,
the
up to the,
neighborhood.
right opposite the entrance to Alex Holmes' property goes up to that point. Yeah. More
We
importantly,
actually-
Cindy, can we, if you don't mind, I understand, and I might be wrong, but the easement for access
Yeah, the
on this,
easement I
I've
had to
heard, and I don't know, you know.
We purchased an easement, the original subdivider of the property, your lot or your client's lot was part of the original parcel that was owned by Ken Torso. And he, that was when it was 2-acre zoning. So he's subdivided off 3 lots, which I combined into one, that's mine. And yours he retained because at one point he was thinking about building on it. So in the meantime, the zoning changed to 4-acre. I mean, we're going way back. We purchased our property in 1980. So this was the one lot that he retained. And then at the time, the planning board wasn't as brilliant as all of you are. And so they didn't require him to provide access to any of the lots that were subdivided. Hence my driveway issue that I think I have the most expensive driveway in Tuxedo Park. But he never provided access. And so many, many, many years later, we were using the old driveway that still exists to the left
Yep.
of where you want to put your house. And it goes up here and comes into the back of my house. He hasn't maintained it in years. But that was originally the only access to any of the lots.
Huh.
And for whatever reason, he was never required to put in driveways to where my house is or any other lots were. So it's been, a lot. But I would just say, any issues like that, I could be very helpful in terms of the drainage issues and wall issues and everything else, so.
So, gentlemen, any questions?
No, obviously it's in a preliminary stage, and there's more to see and review. I think it's a good start. And just, we'll see how things can turn up in the next iteration.
Well, thank you.
My one comment is, for me to have a concrete picture in my head, you can mark it out as soon as possible.
Yeah.
It's a big, big help.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, vicinity
Well,
map and all that would be great.
I'm gonna pause here, though. I think, let's get the maps with the context.
Yes.
And you decide and your client decide whether you want to shift a little bit. I mean, I don't want to ask you all to mark driveways and houses and so forth, and then you decide you want to reposition. But I think the steepness, and the drainage are two
So-
that you're definitely going to have to work with.
Do you have room to shift it this way a bit?
We do.
Okay, because, well, you'll see, and when you get your engineer and everything, but particularly if you're thinking about removing some of those great big old growth trees, that's gonna affect the drainage.
No,
coming down
actually,
there.
we want to keep the trees.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, hard to replace them.
Yeah,
You know, so, right,
I-
it's a,
I think your drainage issue may be kind of right about here.
okay,
But
which we're making, more of a challenge because we've got the house, creating a dam essentially right here.
right,
You know, so.
So that's why
we definitely
I'm-
have some concerns on that.
yeah,
So I-
that's why we're highlighting it.
So just one question with this, as far as where this all started was, kind of just saying, hey, can we clean up a little bit so we can actually sort of see the property better because it's a mess?
Mhm.
And that's, we didn't really want to clear or do it. What we really wanted was to kind of clean out a little bit of underbrush to see, get our bearings, because it's actually hard to navigate a little bit in there.
By the way, I think that's a great idea because that property, we've asked Mr. Dorset to deal with it for years. And it's also a fire hazard. You have a lot of deadfall up there.
It's a mess.
It's a mess.
Although I would balance that with, you don't want to clear so much that you're creating more of a drainage issue.
That's
Right.
the issue with the understory. We really.
Yeah,
don't want the
The
understory
story to go.
Obviously, if there's dead trees that have fallen, if there's dead trees that might be standing, if you can determine them at this time
Now
of the
it's-
year,
yeah.
that's okay, but we really don't want the understory cleared out until we have, a building permit.
Totally fair.
Because that just, makes the drainage issue worse,
Absolutely.
especially going into the winter when nothing is gonna
Right.
reestablish itself.
Have you met the Tuxedo Tree Advisory Board?
Yeah.
You should,
should.
before you start whacking things down.
This is why we gotta
Yeah.
start
Well,
somewhere,
Yeah,
so-
no, absolutely. There is a great environmental stewardship in this. It's a point of pride in this community. And,
And as it should be.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing,
Yeah.
but, I would say it would be worth, especially when you're starting to look at landscaping and what trees to keep or what trees are more sacrificable, whatever, than others is absolutely talk to the advisory board. That's why they have that word in their name.
I think that would be accomplished by also, obviously going to the bar
Yep.
concurrently with this
Yep.
proposal.
I think with all of it, in all the conversations, I feel like the best thing is to do nothing on that lot. Maybe, like you said, clean up a couple dead things if they're there, but really don't touch it until we get a better handle.
It's actually, I was trumping around on it, as you can tell, pipe or whatever that is, but it was actually fairly easy to get around. So it's not nearly as impenetrable as some of the properties are. But clearly, if there are things that are down and dead, that's not a problem to remove. But we just, in fact, had a stewardship meeting about where you clear the understory, everything ends up in the lake.
Yeah.
And the lake is our drinking water. And we feed into the Ramapo and all of New Jersey. So we really want the water, the drainage to stay on your property and not have pesticides and chemicals and heading right into the lake.
That was my question about the pool being located where it is also. But one other just comment, I'm not trying to, when we had to construct our new driveway back in the 80s, one of the big issues was the width for emergency vehicles to be able to get up it with an escort. And the big question was, can a fire truck get up? And that's why the original driveway, which went this way, was wide enough and at a gentle enough slope for emergency vehicles. And that was a huge issue when we tried to do our driveway, just for your.
Yep.
So Jay, you had some preliminary comments. Have we covered that ground?
Yeah, mostly, and especially because now that I understand what the purpose of these drawings were there.
Yeah.
This is the
Meet and greet.
this is the meet and greet, right?
Yeah.
These are, yes, we know these aren't finished yet, but just so, again, without throwing rocks, we're gonna need to see a lot more detail about driveway and drainage and retaining walls and all of that stuff.
We'll have a civil engineer on the project and we will have total detail on it.
And
Absolutely.
But
obviously,
even,
we're trying to minimize terrain alterations, so to the extent that you're building the house in to take advantages of the current levels, that is obviously both less expensive for your applicant, and just less terrain or alteration on the property.
100% agree. Yep. So what is, I guess, what's the next step for us here?
I think you should take the comments that you received this evening, incorporate them in your location of the house in a general sense, and then mark the property and tell us what colors reflect what you're doing. You know, if you do white for the center line of the driveway, or blue for the corners of the house, red for the approximate location of the existing water line, and then schedule another meeting with the planning board. And obviously concurrently, with ample notice, we can send it to the BAR to get their feedback, and they'll have some comments regarding the trees and site disturbance and the understory.
So it feels to me like we're at a point where there are two things I was trying to accomplish. One was to hear if there was a, do not pass go from anybody, but it sounds like if we do all the right things, the water main, we can kind of make this work. But it also feels to me like we're at a point where, as far as our office goes, we're sort of at a stopping point. We've got to get the engineers involved at this point.
Yeah. I think,
That's kind of where we're at. So,
yeah, I would say to
Yeah.
really understand what's going on physically with the property. And I think some of those drainage issues may influence, aside from Cindy's concerns, you may want to shift this way.
totally.
yeah, no, I think you're gonna need get real topo.
Well,
Yeah.
we have it's interesting.
Mm.
We have a hand-drawn topo from like what? The 60s? So
How close
that-
to real is it?
No
mean,
clue.
right, I mean-
Right, no clue. So we're trying to get the client to, which they're ready to, is to get this thing going. But for our preliminary work, we were using that just to get rolling.
Of course.
So, we've got a couple of engineers, we're just ready to pull the trigger now.
Do
So,
you know if it's granite underneath? How much is dirt and how much is?
well,
granite?
we just did a house directly across the lake, for Mr.
You
Rifkin.
did the Rifkin house.
We did.
Yeah, I live up Mountain Farm, so. I
Okay.
every day.
I hope you like it when you come down.
It's lovely. And I
Um,
know why it's sitting, sort of to this point, I know why it's sitting close to the road, because they had constraints with slope and
They were-
setbacks.
That's the only spot you could put that
That
house.
was- Yeah,
Yeah.
and sort of to that topic, I think that house, had they had options, it would be better if it was further back. But it couldn't be.
Could
It
literally.
could not, I
Yeah.
totally understand it couldn't be, so, but I appreciate in that context, not putting this one too close to Tuxedo.
We would love to push it up a ways. So, but as to your question, if this part of the side of the lake is similar to the other side, there was a lot of rock.
There's a lot of rock.
There's a lot of
There's a lot of rock.
everywhere.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of expensive rock removal. But the thing is too, is the house is sort of designed that they don't need to have basement under this whole thing, so that we can kind of focus basement towards the lakeside and hopefully not make it so crazy.
From,
Oh,
he built the house that's up on Tower Hill. What's your address? Rich? If you want to say,
67 Tower Hill.
Okay.
so he's been there, done that.
We had machines and I think it was the third people we hired that could actually get through the granite.
Yeah. We understand.
Yeah.
I went out one day and they were hammering all day and they did 3 feet.
Yeah.
You will make people very happy if you find a way to do it without a HORAM.
That a what?
Without a giant jackhammer.
Oh.
If you can cut rock as opposed to bash rock.
Yeah. No, I
That is an
understand.
issue that-
Well, we
that-
had that at Rifkin's, it's a nuisance. Yeah.
Okay, have we covered the waterfront here for the time being?
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is great. This was just what we wanted to do.
Well,
So-
and the very knowledgeable source about the property.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for coming.
Good.
Okay,
Well, thank you.
all right.
If I may, I'd like to collect these.
Yep.
Simply because our client hasn't seen them yet.
Joanne, can I
That's
just
not
interrupt
great.
a second?
You got the sneak preview.
Is it-
Yes, I wanted to get the correct names. The two assistants weren't speaking into the microphone when they were facing the camera, so it was a little difficult to hear their names clearly.
Tyler Folino.
Yeah, whoopsie.
Is it-
Where's the sound?
That's the microphone, yep.
Yep. Tyler
Folino, Folino.
and
Sierra Bell.
Sierra with an C or an S?
It's spelled differently. It's SEARRA.
Thank you.
Bell, Bell?
Yeah,
The E's and Bell.
And I'm sorry, and
regular Bell.
Jeff,
Sometimes
and
gotta
Jeff,
get
your
the-
last name is,
DEGRAW.
My name's Reichgott. Nobody gets it right.
Well, the last name's so simple. They had to do something interesting.
well, the Rifkin House is a very
Oh,
handsome house, particularly compared to what was there. That was not a hard, but I think many people might look at it and think it's been there the entire time.
Honestly, that's sort of the mission, and I respect that with the park, and the challenge on this house is to do the same thing, make it look like it's always been there.
Yeah, and I'm sure the neighbors will appreciate that. We've had one person doing a modern house and it was not a favorite
Not
thing.
well received, right? But the other thing too is this looks directly at Rifkin's, so I have to make sure it doesn't look like Rifkin's.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the mission. Right, thank you all.
Okay, well, thank you. So we have minutes. And Ashley, who's hiding out there, listening, but explains that we have a bit of a technicality because we no longer have the same lineup of planning board members that we. So. And Jay was.
I believe Jay had missed the meeting where there's some minutes from, so there's no requirement for the board to formally approve the minutes. It's always good to do that, but if there's not a quorum of members that had been at that meeting or had watched the video, then they can just be not approved, and those will be the minutes.
I'm poking around in here. I apologize. I had sent out the date and like completely vanished. The dates of the two that, let me see if I can find it here. Okay, here we go. That would be true of November 9th and October 12th. And then we'll need to come back to the other ones that have not been approved yet, but we may end up in the same place with them. So if we could just deem the October 12th and November 9th submitted. Is that the way to go?
Yes, I think that makes sense.
Okey doke. All right, well, thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Tom, for joining us. And may I have a motion? Do we have anything else we need to cover, John? May I have a motion to close the meeting?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
We
Thanks,
can
everyone.
Turn off the.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good Thanksgiving.